What's up everybody? Welcome back to Film Spectrum, the channel where I talk to you about movies and how they affect me as a person on the autism spectrum. Today's title is 10 Cloverfield Lane. Let's get started. 10 Cloverfield Lane is a thriller set in the Cloverfield universe, starring John Goodman, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and John Gallagher Jr. It was directed by Dan Trachtenberg and it came out in 2016. This movie comes after Cloverfield, but it's not a sequel. It's set in the same universe as Cloverfield. And full disclosure, I still haven't seen Cloverfield, sorry. And you don't have to see Cloverfield in order to see this movie. I'm sorry, I haven't seen it yet, I just haven't gotten around to it. So the story of my first time seeing this movie, I don't really have an interesting story about it. My wife and I just kept hearing from all of our family and friends how good it was, and that you didn't have to see Cloverfield in order to understand this movie. And that's completely true. So one night after we put the kids to bed, I ran out to Redbox to rent the movie. We brought it back and we marveled at everyone's performances. We are not horror movie fans, but we do like thrillers, psychological thrillers, occasionally some ghost stories, and things like that. But we're not really into horror films. And if you're in the same boat, then this movie is a great one to recommend. It's a very well done thriller that keeps you on the edge of your seat from beginning to end and is filled with tension. So let's talk about heightened emotional response. We watched 10 Cloverfield Lane just a few weeks ago, so it's still pretty fresh in my mind. And I want to go ahead and give a spoiler alert because I'm assuming that if you're watching this video, then you've already seen the movie. Right out of the gate, this movie gives off a vibe of hopelessness and complete unease. I directly react not only to the characters and what they're going through, but to the vibe in general of this movie. When I'm watching this movie, my mind can't switch to normal mode and realize that I'm not going through what these characters are going through. What these characters experience is truly horrifying. And it's not just because there's a threat of monsters or an explosion or whatever, it's that their lives are completely interrupted. And that is specifically what I react to. As soon as we find out about the blast and the radiation, my mind immediately starts thinking about all the things that I can no longer do because I feel like I'm in this universe, in this bunker with all of these characters. And it's almost impossible to completely separate myself from that. I think Dan Trachtenberg does a great job of capturing the vibe and the thought of your life will not be the same from now on. I also relate to some of Howard's quirks in how he responds to things and gets incredibly annoyed at very small things and laughing at inappropriate times. I've been known to do that. It's something I wish I could change, but here we are. So let's go ahead and talk about aesthetics. So as I mentioned before with the hopelessness vibe, the color palette of this movie really does lend itself well to that overall vibe of hopelessness and unease that I mentioned earlier. I react to so many of the visuals here. This movie has a very small moment. It's really small actually, but I am a really big fan of water and bubbles, specifically the sound of it, and also the visuals. I'm just a huge fan of bubbles. Sorry. And when Howard mentions his aquaponics system that he's got set up, that's probably my favorite aesthetic moment in the movie. I want to have a loop of watching the bubbles flow like over and over again because rewinding that over and over and just watching that would drive my wife insane. I also love the balance of color palettes in this movie. We go from warm inside of Michelle's room to cool in the rest of the bunker. It's a feast for my eyes because to me, color is simply mesmerizing. Now let's talk about immersement level. Even though this is a bleak universe that all of these characters inhabit, it's still very alluring, at least to me. Even before all of the bad stuff starts going down in this movie, that's not really what pulls me into it. The part that pulls me in is when Howard says to Michelle, everyone outside is dead. And right when he says that, the music swells up and her reaction and everything. And that to me is what pulls me into this movie. That's what gets me in and I'm like, I'm right there with these characters now. I feel like I'm right there standing in the room with both of them and I can feel the tension between all of these characters. I notice all of the small things like them sitting on the couch and reading the magazines because there's not really that much else to do, you know? I like to kind of imagine what I would do in those situations. I think that it's a little bit different for me because I watch movies and I am not just an onlooker. I always feel like I'm in the movie. Some movies more than others, but definitely this one. The scene where the woman is knocking on the door begging to be let in, that is when my empathy goes through the roof. Where other people may feel some discomfort or unease, I actually do feel a deep level of sadness, and it actually happens right here. It's right behind my eyes. Not necessarily starting to cry, but it's like this pain that's not a sharp pain. It's almost like the feeling of you're about to cry, but it's not really about crying. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it doesn't really feel good. Also, major spoiler ahead, just in case you discarded the previous spoiler alert, the scene where Howard shoots Emmett. It is so completely unexpected, especially with how that scene was playing out up until that moment. Right after Emmett apologizes to Howard, we get this kind of sense of calm. Michelle closes her eyes and she's in relief and everything. And then right after that, Howard pulls out his gun and just shoots him right in the head. This shot, the actual gunshot, actually does cause like a rush of sensation in my chest. I feel it right here. Usually whenever somebody gets shot in a movie, I'll actually feel it wherever they got shot. So like in some cases I would, if they got shot in the head, I would feel it in my head or like behind my eyes or something like that. But in this particular case, it was right here in the chest. The editing in this scene is just so well balanced. You've got tension, and then the tension seems to go down, and then it just blows through the roof as soon as he shoots him. It's just amazing. It's like when you think something bad is going to happen, and then it doesn't happen, and then something really bad ends up happening, or it could be that same thing, and it just blows up in your face. The last thing that I want to talk about with this movie is the music. As we all know, music is crucial to every single movie, but this is probably one of the better scores that I've heard in a movie. It just does such a great job of matching the tension. I actually do feel like these characters in this universe, I guess I feel like I'm there, so like I already feel like I'm there, but I feel like that in the moment, the way that everything is edited together, that the characters are actually hearing the music inside of the universe. At least that's what is going on in my mind. It just pulls me so much into the movie, and all of the music just swells around every single one of these scenes. And then of course I start thinking about these characters and how they're processing things as they're hearing this music play, and then I just go down this rabbit hole that exists only in my mind. My favorite line in this movie, it's a small one actually, but I do think that it really captures the feeling and the essence of the entire movie. It's when Howard says to Michelle, no one is looking for you. Wow, no one? No one at all? And he's right, at least as far as we know with this universe. Everyone she knows is most likely dead, and that sums up perfectly the hopelessness and the unease that this movie conveys. I feel a sense of impending doom when he delivers this line. My favorite scene of this movie is probably when Michelle is making a stabbing weapon out of one of her crutches and she's waiting for Howard to come into the room. I like it because it's a funny moment in the movie, which the movie does have a lot of funny moments, but for some reason this one, like, it doesn't take you out of the tension of the movie. It actually does help add to it. But I also like how realistic it is. It shows her standing there and waiting for him to come in. And she's just waiting, and the music is swelling and everything like that. And of course, as the audience member, you're sitting there expecting him to come in, and she's gonna try to stab him, and she's gonna fall over, and blah blah blah, and all this stuff and everything. And that doesn't happen. The movie even plays it like that's what's going to happen, and it never does. It always kills me how the protagonist in a movie can enact a plan, start working on that plan, and then something may happen to where, as a member of the audience, you're thinking, oh no, they're about to get caught, and then nothing comes from that, and then they continue on with their plan, and then and then their plan goes off without a hitch, and like that's I'm sorry, like I don't always look for realism in movies. I actually rarely do, because movies are movies, they're escape from reality. But when their plans just happen to work out, like as a member of the audience, of course you root for the protagonist, but at the same time it's like do something a little bit more original. And this movie does. Her plan doesn't end up working out, and so she goes to a different plan. This scene is a great balance of comedy and realism happening in this world. I also really like the scene where they're sitting down playing charades. Howard is so into the game, but he's also frustrated because of how into the game he actually is getting. I watched this movie and I feel like this is how I am at charades. Really overthinking things, taking things way too seriously, and of course the Santa Claus bit is absolutely hilarious. It happens early enough in the movie where you don't really know how dangerous he is or what he's capable of yet. So it's a great balance, again, of like some of the horror elements and then also the comedy elements. Actually, now that I think about it, this film is, I don't know if I can say it is the best, but it's one of the best that I've seen that balances horror with comedy perfectly. So my final thoughts on the movie. Even though I've only seen it twice, I really enjoyed watching it both times, and actually enjoyed it more the second time I watched it. It's original and strangely inviting. Obviously, I own the movie, so I really enjoy it, but I would say that it's a yearly watch. It's a great movie to watch either, if you want to watch something around Halloween, or if you want a really late night movie. That's the kind of vibe that this movie gives off. It's a late night, great thriller, especially with all of those beautiful fluorescent lights. Besides his role on Roseanne, this is definitely my favorite John Goodman performance. He absolutely steals the show. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed my discussion about 10 Cloverfield Lane. The next movie in the queue is 13 Hours. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will talk to you next time. That's a wrap.